basically nobody actually buys it. But like that's the sort of thing that people around me bought into when I was growing up and like learning the way I was learning about things. It wasn't like oh well, let's wrestle with the contradictions and the complexities of this issue. It was like, no, they're bad. We
So,
are good. You don't need to know more than that.
and then everything else is brainwashing or conspiracy, because since it's clearly contradictory to what you're taught there. Is that what they? Is that what
Yeah,
these
it's
people
just
are?
like, everyone else hates you, and we need to stick together, so stick together. They hate you. Um, I remember the one thing I've heard at least once was like, oh, Hitler would have gotten you too, even if you say you're a Muslim now. And so, that is something that really it makes you think a certain way, especially when you go through the whole like, okay, well, I'm a kid, and like most people aren't like strong enough to go against peer pressure. Going against peer pressure is hard. That's going to come into play in the 5th lecture, which, if current estimates and trajectories continue, I will deliver to you personally.
I don't mind. This entire series was started because I got sick of hearing it and reading it in WhatsApp, and I want to hear it in person. So
That works for me too. But
the
yes.
inception of this was very selfish, and I don't mind. I'm benefiting, and these brothers, and alhamdulillah, we had, like I was telling you, 54 people total tune in last week. It's not a bad number. It's good.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of them beginning to end, but alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
It's of immense benefit for me, and I'm sure for those who are here now. And you build it, and they will come.
Bi'idhnillah. But yeah, so like most people are not strong enough to go against peer pressure, especially when peer pressure is like, it's like united in several ways. There's an interesting book called Mitzvah Girls, which
Mitzvah Girls?
Yeah, this is actually not related to Zionism, but it's just
It's really hard to explain why that's on my Amazon list to my family.
Yes. So Mitzvah Girls is like a sociological, anthropological study of the practices of Haredi, like Jews, meaning like ultra-Orthodox Jews, very observant Jews, the ones you see with the black hats and the fur caps and all that stuff, those guys. It's a study of their practices around child rearing for girls only, because the author of it is a secular Jew, and she was not permitted to access the boys because it was feared that her influence could corrupt them, but she was permitted to access the girls. And one thing that really stands out is that they have systems that take a strong line across the board, and they have a very strong, I mean, this is something you know just from seeing them, but they have a very strong community in the sense that like they're able to say, if you don't toe this line, your life will be very difficult. Like, and you will not be able to fit back in. You will not. So there's a strong incentive to toe the line, even to the extent of, for example, limiting or denying access to cell phones in the house. Like you can, in some of the schools for girls, they will tell you you can't give them access to a cell phone in the house. You have to teach them certain things. They have to come in knowing these things. Like, and so as a result, the pressure is like it's like a full court press, like it's like, I'm gonna date myself here, but it's like you're being followed up the court by Tony Allen the whole time. Tony Allen?
No,
Anyone?
no.
Man, I'm so old. But yeah, who's the equivalent of Tony Allen now? Patrick Beverly? Okay, Patrick Beverly?
Patrick Beverly, no?
I'm batting
Patrick
zero.
Beverly, no?
No.
That's a surprise.
Oh my God. Okay.
Now I'm done. I don't know. I can't go past Patrick
Oh
Beverly.
man. Okay, but the point is, it's like it's like there's a full court press by good defenders, and even if they're not good, there's so many of them. I mean, that's difficult for people to get past. That's difficult for people to get in front of. And this isn't to give people an excuse. This is just to explanation is not justification. If I say why something's happening, I'm not saying it's a good thing or that it's excusable. Obviously, I don't believe it's excusable, but it is an explanation for why most people turn out the way they do. And no, I'm not saying that like I had that kind of like full court press community upbringing, but like I mentioned last time, most Jewish education, at least that I experienced in some of these less observant sects, is really about Zionism. And for them, Zionism is that thing that if you don't toe the line, then your life will be very difficult. So like I said, some people advised my mother to sit shiva for me, which means pretend I was dead, when I became Muslim. And if I had come out like as a full, like, if I had been like very obnoxious or like public about being an anti-Zionist before I became a Muslim, which is what happened, then it would have been the same kind of thing. I would have had at least some people advising my mother, hey, you should pretend he's dead. So, yeah. Okay, and now that we have some backing stuff, welcome to the Anatomy of Zionism, Lecture 2, with this gentleman, Sheikh Mohammad Badawy, and myself, Haroun Egbert, and I just want to give special credits to Brother Ali Kolak, who has helped me a lot with fact-checking and cohesion and such. May Allah bless and reward him.
Ameen. So yeah, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Salatu Salam, Rasulullah. Take 2, let's go for it.
Okay. So we talked last time about, and I think only one of you was here, but we talked about nationalism, and if you have not read about that or heard about that, you should go back and check that out, but you know, it won't disable you. But we said that Zionism is really just nationalism for Jews, and we said that's a good way to look at it because it explains a lot of the horrible things the movement did, and it helps explain like why they did certain things and why the Zionists continue to do certain things, particularly like the homogenization thing, trying to make everybody the same, trying to rule only one type of people, in this case, only Jews. And we gave the example of the Circassian genocide, which was a little earlier in the 19th century, and it was something that Russia did to the Circassians, who are an Islamic people who now are scattered throughout the Islamic world.
So just as to remind us, how did that end? Russia annexed Circassia?
Yeah, Russia annexed Circassia. They took over the east coast of the Black Sea land, which is where they were. The place where they had the Olympics in Russia, in Sochi, that was a Circassian city which they destroyed and rebuilt. That was a thing in 2014. So yeah, and yeah, all the Circassians live in like Turkey, Jordan. As far as I know, they're part of like the King's Royal Guard in Jordan, and in Israel too. There are 2 such villages.
Do they have like a Circassian identity, or that just kind of?
No, they still have it. It's under threat with, you know, the internet, with TikTok, with that sort of thing. It's under threat. Like it's, you know, it's harder to maintain like a little village that's like insular and stuff in this time. The Circassian one branch of the Circassian language is dead. Like it's actually dead. The last native speaker is dead. He wrote in this is an aside, but like he wrote like a little note to the researcher who followed him like shortly before he died. He was like, look, you are, I think it was I don't remember the name of the language, the Butich or the Burek, but you are the Burek language now. All the dreams of the people are dead.
Super pressure.
Yeah, so. Anyway, but now that we've covered that, the next step is to talk about the Zionisms, because, you know, there isn't just one. Bad things come in packs. This week we're going to talk about the secular Zionisms, the ones that are not religious in nature. I mean, some of the people we'll talk about next week would dispute that, but next week we'll talk about the religious Zionisms. And the purpose of this in the next week is like as kind of an intellectual history of Zionism. And people might think, well, why do that? They're like, we know they're not good. It's like, okay, but what's happening right now in Gaza and in many other places, because every time I look at the news, it's somewhere else. It's not possible without an ideology, without something driving you. People can't do something that evil unless like they're absolutely convinced it's actually good. And as such, you know, you need to know what people are saying and what they're doing both. And the Palestinian Liberation Organization knew this. That's why they had their Beirut research office. That's why they read all of the guys we're going to talk about today. So
is for the average Muslim, it's important to know this.
Yeah,
Would you argue that?
It is my opinion that it is in fact important.
Okay.
Because in so much as there are many types of Zionism, that is something that can be helpful in understanding how and why cracks can form in the edifice, because that's how you can do something. You can do something if you can make a crack form in the edifice and widen it. And I think that should go without comment. The more division there is, the weaker someone is.
Well, makes sense. So where do we start with the intellectual history of secular Zionism?
Okay, well, Basically, and one thing I want to point out is that, like, people say and do things, and sometimes things people say and what they do are different. It's important to know both of those, because in the case of Zionists especially, like, a lot of times they say things which might sound nice if you're not paying attention, and then they do things that are awful. But at the same time, the ones who do say and do the same thing, it's bad in both cases. If they say and do the same thing, both of the things they say, I kind of got garbled here. Both the things they say and the things they do are bad in that case, in some groups. So
does that make it worse if they don't match the ideology, or is it irrelevant for us as Muslims at the end of the day?
I think it's relevant because you can, like, at the very least, like, you can make people seem hypocritical. Like, if you're looking like, well, look, this is what so-and-so, this is what your founder said, and this was his stated ideals. Why is this what it looks like?
Okay, perfect.
Like, why is this what it looks like in practice? Was that just fake? And if it was fake, what else is fake? Mm-hmm. So let's start out at the first European, let's start out at the early migrations. Okay, I was supposed to go through a bunch of these. Should I go back or no?
Up to you.
Okay, very briefly. This is the current occupant of the original Beirut research office of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. It's now luxury apartments in Lebanon. They're renting for pretty high, if anyone's interested. Over here, this is the book, The Doctrine of Fascism by Mussolini, and this is the flag of fascist Italy. And I was supposed to display this when I was making the point that what people say and what they do is different. Like, what Mussolini said and what he did, in some cases, were very different.
What was, like, one discrepancy there that's important?
He was a lot less pro-worker than he appeared to be in his book, The Doctrine of Fascism. A lot less pro-labor, a lot more pro-corporation. And this right here is a labor Zionist poster encouraging Jewish farming.
Around what time would this be?
This is pretty early. I think this is probably 1910s. Okay, so first off, the first European Jewish migrations to Palestine were actually not for Zionist purposes. They were purely for religious purposes. The first thing we have to remember is that the exile, the diaspora, quote unquote, the galut, it was not like a physical exile. The Romans didn't go door to door, knock, 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 skedaddle. What they did was they kind of like destroyed the centers of Jewish life in Palestine as such as it existed, and then a lot of people decided to leave. So by the standards of Zionists today, it would actually kind of be like voluntary migration. Mm-hmm. This is a picture on the Arch of Titus. You can see it in Italy, and it shows the Roman soldiers carrying the menorah out of the temple, which they destroyed. The point is, before Zionism, there were in fact like native Palestinian Jewish communities in places like Tiberias, Safed, Quds, Akka, Al-Khalil. But the first European Jewish migrations were started by a famous rabbi named Elijah ben Solomon. He's known as the Vilna Gaon. And today, this is the old. Today, the people who dress like this specific dress, because there are other dress that is similar but not quite the same, they're called the Lithuanians or the Litvish or the Litvaks, and they follow his method of teaching. They wear those like particular kind of hats. So because the Ottomanis didn't like stop Jews from migrating to Palestine, so a lot of them went, at least this group. He sent a bunch of them to live there and to study Torah, not to set up a state, just live there, study Torah, separate yourselves from the impurities of Europe, and they lived off what was called chalukah, which is like a charity that used to be collected for poor Jews living in what is now like Israel.
So Jewish. It's like those Jewish. It's like the Sufi.
No.
Enclaves that they had at times in certain places were just religious purposes.
Yeah, this was a religious purpose.
Like they had those in the Haroun at times where people just go, they live there, live off of sadaqah for a religious purpose in the Holy Land.
Yeah, you could think of it like that. They did also do some farming though. They grew these things. This is a picture of them. They're called the old yeshuv meaning settlement. And on the right side, you probably see like guys holding those things around the fall time. Those are called etrogs. They're kind of citron, and they're used for Jewish ritual purposes. So the old yeshuv also like did grow some of these. But the point is, they didn't come to make a state. They came just to live there as individuals. It's very different. And their descendants today are identifiable in many Haredi neighborhoods, like this one. This is an image of what's a neighborhood called Mia Shiarim in Al-Quds, I think in Western Al-Quds. Some are a lot of the ones who are there now are anti-Zionist, and some are like what you would call non-Zionist.
What's the difference?
Well, let's qualify. So this here is three images which encapsulate like the spectrum of like what do ultra-Orthodox Jews think about Zionism. On the left side you have Chabad. So Chabad, which is a very popular Jewish sect, the guys with those vans and the pictures of the bearded guy. I'm sure if you're in Brooklyn, you have to have seen those. Or they have also.
Moshiach is coming.
Yeah, Moshiach is coming. Those guys. That's these guys. So
I live in a Jewish neighborhood.
Yeah, Chabad is fanatically Zionist. Their Rebbe, who died in 1993 or something, I think, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, he actually was against even giving back the Sinai. Like that's how Zionist they are. And a lot of the worst examples of settlers and people are from their group. In the middle, you have a guy called the Chazon Ish, and he started basically the current system of Haredi Jews in Israel who get stipends from the government and don't work. And he's obviously, I'm not saying his method of doing things is acceptable. I'm saying there's a spectrum here. His idea is I would call him non-Zionist because he lives there, but they live there for religious purposes. They make use of the state, but they don't serve in the army, and a lot of them vote. But they don't vote on issues outside of basically who will give us the most money.
Okay.
For maintaining our particular lifestyle.
So they just benefit from the existence of the
they consider
government.
it still they consider it still okay. It's good to live there because for religious purposes, but they're not the same kind of people like Chabad who will start settlements and serve in the IDF and stuff like that. I'm not saying they're good. I'm saying they're different. On the right side, these are people from Mia Shiarim. You see there's a Palestinian flag there with some Hebrew graffiti, and those are the people who march in the demonstrations. Those are people like Neturei Karta or Satmar and others. Here,
and they're pro-Palestinian in Palestine.
Yes.
Even in Palestine.
Yeah, even in Palestine. I'm sure probably some of you have seen clips on Twitter or somewhere else of Zionist police going into places and beating up Jews carrying Palestinian flags. And they look like the guys who march, and you're like, what's going on here? Those people are Neturei Karta, or they're Eda HaCharedis, and they're not pro-cooperation with the state. They live there, but a lot of them even, I remember there was even a clip of one of them saying, I want Ismail Haniyeh to be my governor.
Oh, wow.
Which is, it was a very odd thing to hear someone say, considering his background. So, yeah, there's a spectrum here of what the Haredi groups do in the state. I'm not saying that the middle guy is good, I'm saying he is different.
And all three of them are considered Haredi?
Yeah,
Which is
Haredi means God-fearing.
Okay.
So the more observant Jews, the ones who do more of the Jewish fiqh, the halakha, those are called Haredi.
Okay. So it's not a sect, it's just a...
It's a designation for a lot of different sects. There are a lot of them. There are so many. I mean, I can't even count them all. Okay, so as it so happens from the 1880s, I'm thinking, where's the thing? Am I missing something? I am. Okay, well, from the 1880s, you have the first settlements that are Zionist, specific to Zionism. And the first of them was called Rishon LeZion, which means the first in Zion, which, I mean, guy, you're the 1000th. Come on, who are you kidding?
But so they meant the first with the Zionist ideology?
Yeah, exactly. That's what
first
they meant.
state establishment.
That is what they meant, yes. And they were started by what you could call a pre- or a proto-Zionist group called Lovers of Zion or Hibbat Zion, who took inspiration from this guy, Leo Pinsker. So who is Leo Pinsker? Like I said, he was what you would call proto-Zionist because the ideology hadn't really crystallized in the form it takes now. So his booklet, this booklet, Auto-Emancipation, it's not that long if you're interested in reading it yourself. It's really not that long, but it's written like a 19th century book. So if you're into Charles Dickens, then you can handle it, okay? But if long sentences bother you, then... the point is, though, that he's actually kind of a far-thinking guy because a lot of what he wrote actually is reflected in the modern state. There were several themes in here that were important. First off, his opinion was that Jews are not a nation, and they don't see themselves as a nation. To Pinsker, as would be common for a lot of other 19th century thinkers, and today, we would say that a nation, at least, is a group of people that has a common language, a common land, and common customs, and the Jews of the time did not have those things. So in what sense could they be called a nation? And this is, you might consider, very different from modern Zionist lines about how the Jews are an eternal nation. His opinion also is that Jews will not be free from their condition until they have a national life, like a collective life living in a national land, as opposed to living in minorities in hundreds of lands. And you gotta remember, like, when he writes this, Italian and German states have unified, nationalism is on the heavy upswing. Like, he's proposing that we should adopt this thing, nationalism, for ourselves as a solution to that problem, because assimilation, he says, will fail. Nationalism is, of course, the new Jordans. Everyone wants one.
Those are the new Jordans?
I don't know if those are the new Jordans or not. Like, I wear New Balance, man. I wear dad shoes. If those aren't the new ones, then forgive me. Forgive my ignorance.
So this guy Pinsker, where's he from?
Russia.
Russia.
Yeah. To Pinsker, like, the fact that, like, Jews aren't a nation and don't want to be one is actually proof that they're diseased, that they're sick in the head.
He's saying this is a problem that we have.
Yeah, he says this is a problem that you have because nationalism will solve the problem, so why don't you want it?
He's Jewish himself, right?
Yeah, of course. He's saying, like, when you're sick, you don't want to eat, you don't want to drink, but that doesn't mean food and drink are bad for you. It means you're sick and you feel like you don't want to, but you should. The same thing. He thinks that basically his idea is that because Jews will never be legally and actually equal to Europeans because of nationalism, the only solution to that is to also become nationalists themselves. So if you don't want to do that, then you're obviously sick. You're going to continue living like a beggar in other people's lands, and people will hate you forever. And a lot of his thought and a lot of his line of argumentation is because of the pogroms in Russia in the late 19th century. There's a really good description of one in the first episode of Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem by Daryl Cooper, which is a very, very, very long podcast, but I nonetheless recommend it. It's good listening.
What is the subject matter?
Just this, like the entire history from a very long view of Zionism, and he treats a lot of different asides. He only gets up to like 1982, but it is a good listen. This is an image of a pogrom, so this.
Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem.
Yes, he is pro-Palestine, but he's also very right-wing. So he's an interesting person.
It's an interesting time.
Yes, it is an interesting time. So, and as it so happens, most of the most important Zionist settlers, the early ones, were from Russia. The first cabinet of Israel, as it happened, this is an image of the first cabinet of Israel, and like 75% of these people, like the first government, the cabinet meaning the people who run different parts of the government, 75% of these people are from Russia or from places controlled by Russia. So there's a reason for that. Poland, Ukraine, Belarus. The guy who's from Mandate Palestine is all originally from, if I remember right, Turkey, Canada. That guy's also not from Canada. He's from, I forget where. Belarus, Ukraine, Poland. Ukraine. There's only one guy from Germany, and most of them are from Belarus or Russia and Ukraine. So there you go.
Indigenous people.
So, additionally, he anticipates something very important, which is that whole land buying to sovereignty thing. So he argues that basically the way that Jews can control a country is if over time, bit by bit, they buy a single large contiguous territory with permission of what they could call an overlord, like someone who has suzerainty, if you want to use that word. Someone who can say who and what can do what in a place. And he doesn't specify Palestine. Like at this point, Palestine is not quite like the one place. And he said once it's purchased, hold it as a national trust. So the people don't own it. No individual person owns it. The nation owns it.
You're doing it for the Ummah.
The Jummah.
The Jummah.
So, to this day, as it happens, land in Israel is controlled by these two entities, 93% of it. On the left side is the emblem of the Israel Land Administration. I can't actually read that Hebrew, sorry. And on the right side is the Jewish National Fund, and that's 13%, that's about 80%, and the remaining 7% is owned by private owners. You actually can't buy land there. You can lease it. So you can lease it from these people or from these people. And I remember growing up with a Jewish National Fund box in my house. I remember that.
And that box is to support?
To support the Jewish National Fund. Like, that's literally how they did it. There was a box in probably 90% of Jewish households. And everyone, it's like, oh, put your tzedakah, not sadaqah, but they say, in Hebrew, you would say tzedakah, put your tzedakah money in there. You would give coins to your kid when they're young. Put your tzedakah in there. And eventually you're literally taught that it's a good thing to usurp lands from people, and that is a good deed, and everyone should do it. And to this day, the Jewish National Fund land is impossible for any non-Jew to use at all. So all the land in the green there cannot use it. Any non-Jew in Israel today cannot lease that land. It is not permitted.
And the government is behind these two?
Yeah, it's complicated. It's like a non-governmental governmental organization. One thing that Zionists do is they have a lot of bodies that coordinate with the government but aren't strictly part of the government, like IPAC. IPAC does whatever the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs tells it to do. People who work for IPAC know what they're supposed to do, but they're not literally, in a legal sense, part of the government. The Jewish National Fund is like that. The Jewish National Fund, which again is on the right, that's the box. I had that box or a box like it. They're not part of the government, but they can do what they want. They're not controlled by the law. There was a whole famous court case about it, which I don't want to get into. It's going to take a really long aside, but the point is that they're in the government but not of the government. So they can sort of do shady things in a certain way. And the Israel Land Administration, by the way, 5 people on the board of it are controlled by the Jewish National Fund. So basically, the deck is stacked against you. This is something we'll talk about in the 5th lecture, but there's a way to look like you're doing things in an equality way if you're not looking hard, but then when you look hard, the effects of a thing is actually, oh no, you're actually doing the apartheid thing. Yeah. But you're just doing it really carefully. Exactly.
Systemic, sanitized, corporate language.
Exactly.
Structured oppression.
Exactly. But this is how they did it. They bought land from absentee landlords or collaborative landlords, people who lived in Beirut or somewhere else, and who happened to have been given land in Palestine by the Ottomani land reform in the 19th century. And they used it as a springboard to make a continuous chain of settlements in areas that are now called Gush Dan. Gush Dan is the western coast, so where it says Tel Aviv, where Jaffa is, the fertile land, and in the north. And
so some people might argue, sorry to interrupt, but they might argue, well, what did they do wrong if they're buying it from these owners and stringing it together?
Well, I mean, this is, okay, let me look at this. This is a picture of a townhouse in Brooklyn, okay? Can I buy this townhouse?
Townhouse in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Looks like that?
Yeah, it's very nice. Can I buy this?
News to me, I mean.
Can I buy this and declare it the Republic of 249 Eldert Street number 2?
If that's the address.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
Are you looking for a minister of random things?
No. The point is, I can't do that. Buying a piece of land doesn't translate to having sovereignty over it. That's not the equivalency here. If I buy this, I'm subject to all the relevant laws of the governing authority. But you can do amazing things if you have a lot of guns and the permission of empire. Mm-hmm. So buying a lot of land does not translate to having sovereignty over it. They just kind of made it work that way with, again, guns and permission. So Pinsker's writing and the pogroms of the 19th century spurred on the early efforts, and a group of settlers from the Russian Empire, here we go. A group of settlers from the Russian Empire purchased some land near Ramla from Beirut-based Greek Christian businessmen who had been given the land, and they displaced all the fellahin, they kicked them all out, and they started this town called Revisionist Zionism. This is a picture of it in 1905 or so. And here, moving past this, I could talk about Hertzl here. This guy is very famous, but I'm going to talk about him more in his program when we get to lobbying, because he's much more relevant to that. There's not much difference between Hertzl and Pinsker in practice in terms of like what they want ultimately, but the difference is about like how do you do it. Herzl's idea is it's top down. You get permission, you get a charter from like some European sovereign, the German Empire, whoever, and then you use that to build a country. And Pinsker is like the opposite. He's like, no, you start, build the town, build the farm, and eventually you'll get Zion. And a second difference was that Hertzl thought that anti-Semitism could be solved, and Pinsker did not. That would also later become a split in the current state.
But in the end of the day, they're both non-religious Jews.
Yeah, neither of them are religious. Pinsker was not religious. Herzl was not religious. The early Zionists were, broadly speaking, like almost to a man, not religious. Like most of them were atheists. I'm sure Neturei Karta have told you that before.
Yeah.
So, and today Israel does both of those things. Like they have their charter to do basically whatever they want from America and from Europe, and they also do the Pinsker thing by creating, quote, facts on the ground through settlements, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. As it so happens, though, Hebat Zion was not popular because, I mean, think about it, does this look like a great place to live? Not really. The youth it needed were more inclined towards, communism, which is more fun and exciting than like, okay, I'm gonna go farm several thousand miles from my house. Maybe in 100 years this will be a country or something. Like, one of those pitches is more exciting. It was asking people to do something like really difficult in an alien landscape for a very uncertain reward. The diaries of the early settlers are full of like this sentiment, like this land is strange. These people are strange. Why am I here? I don't like these people. There's an awareness there that, of course, these people are ultimately your enemy, even if you're not saying it now.
So what drove these people to go do that? If it's not religious, and why are they establishing a state for 100, like so far in the future?
Well, that's the thing. That's why I said it didn't work. Hebat Zion was not popular. The settlements failed. Like it had to be sort of rescued by the later kinds of people, the Herzl direct-oriented people.
Okay.
So his effort did not work out. And really, one of the nice insights of Darryl Cooper in that podcast series is that the Zionists, the young ones, they were revolutionaries. Like this was a time of transitions, of great power struggles, of like the old world is dying, the new world is struggling to be born. Now is the time of monsters. And a lot of young Jews who were more secular, because remember Zionism is secular in the beginning, were like, okay, well I'm Jewish, whatever. I like communism because that's going to abolish all national difference. And I get to go after the bourgeoisie. I get to go after the big fat cat capitalists. Like, why would I want to go farm thousands of miles from my house when I could do that instead?
It's fiery, it's fast, it's more exciting.
Exactly. And the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party was formed in 1898. And a lot of the competition it had, the ideological competition it had in the Jewish community was with Zionists. So as a result or as a reaction, there emerged labor Zionism. This is... I hope it didn't take too long to get to that, but this is the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. Famously, a lot of Jews were in the communist movement. Trotsky is probably the most famous.
Animal Farm.
Yes. Anyway.
You just triggered a memory. My brain was like, Animal Farm, say it. This has been 20 years in the making.
Labor Zionism. This is one of the early logos of Poal Zion, which was one of the more important labor Zionist organizations. Labor Zionism is also a bit of a ship of Theseus, so...
you guys remember the ship of Theseus?
None of them do. They weren't here. He was here. So the ship, it's like the ship where you change all the parts and like, is it the same thing or not? Like labor Zionism kept the parts of socialism that attracted people but sort of reoriented them. And the reason labor Zionism is important is because for 75 years, from like 1902 to 1905, give or take, till 1977, its parties ran the country, like unopposed. They were completely dominant, culturally, economically, in every possible way.
Where?
In Israel.
In Israel.
And in like pre-Israel, in the new Yeshuv. That's an image of a party conference. Like,
I guess you were gonna go through it later, how they shifted far right.
Yeah, that's comes
Much
later.
later, okay.
But its metaphor, even its metaphors, still run the state. Like the settlers, the modern settlers, still kind of act and dress and act like the early pioneers. On the left side, you can see the chechalots, the pioneers, and on the right side, you can see modern settlers, more modern, from the ones from Gush Emunim.
That's why they're dressed so raggedy all the time?
Yeah, exactly. The ones who are now, who are like even more raggedy, don't do that anymore. The modern ones who you see like acting like total psychos don't do that anymore. They've kind of jettisoned it. But that's a long time. Like we're talking about almost like 120 years until people are just like, yeah, I'm done with this. In theory, as articulated by these two gentlemen, the right one looks like Trotsky, but he's not. That's someone else. As articulated by Sirkin, that's this guy, and Borokhov, that's that guy, and others, labor Zionism's basic idea is to become a nation among the nations. Jews need to connect with the soil and farm, because that's like how societies progress. That's how societies are built. Jews need to become proletarian, like yani workers. They need to become workers. Otherwise, Jews will be destroyed by the forces of history. And this idea and why they thought it made sense rests on a lot of kind of Marxist gobbledygook about like how the economy changes and how it transforms society, but like that's not really that important. The point is, to them, farming and working is what makes you an authentic, real people. And when you read them, like you see the extent to which like the idea of nationalism just underlies everything they're doing. They assume it's true. They come off like thinking of it this way, because for them, nationalism is normal. To be normal, we need to make a nation state, and if we do this, ultimately we can get to socialism. So for them, Zionism was a way to implement socialism and be a light to the nations again. In practice, like, and these are some example posters. You can see how they're sort of glorifying farming, even if you can't read them.
So just a quick question here. They're advocating doing this within Russia or a new state altogether?
No,
This is within Russia.
This is in Israel. They're
This is
saying
in Israel,
go
okay.
to. Then we're getting to that. See, part of it is like they had their attachment to romantic nationalism. So they said part of being reborn as a people is going to your native soil, and
Okay.
their idea was
So
go to
leave
your
Russia, leave all these
Russia, go
places, go
to
and
quote
establish
Eretz
this.
Yisrael. That's your native soil. That's where you can become a real people again.
Got it.
So you know.
And they're speaking to Russian Jews at this time, or they're just sending it worldwide to Jewish communities?
Like this went everywhere, but like the most important labor Zionist people were Russian Jews, and some of them, if I remember right, were British Jews, but most of them were Russian. Okay. Russian or in places controlled by Russia. Like, you know, so that's what they said. The question is like, what about people who actually did stuff? Because I said we have to talk about what people say and what they did. So this gentleman. Yeah. Oh, I like this. So right there, that's actually a Jewish National Fund poster. A nation reborn on its ancestral soil. It makes my point very clear. The idea, there's a connection between nation and soil and land in nationalism, which in this case is at least partially imaginary. So here emerges this gentleman. On the guy on the left is David Ben-Gurion. You could think of him as Israel's George Washington, but his hair was even worse, somehow.
Were his teeth wood?
Huh?
Wooden teeth? Did he have wooden teeth?
Not that I know of. I think they gave that up by like the 20th century. He was a 1900s era settler from Russia, but he had an extreme talent for both organization and for politics. The scope of his life is like way beyond this lecture, so I'm not going to go into it, but he's the most important founding father of the Zionist entity, and he bears the most responsibility for it. He was a major figure into politics until like the 1970s, which is crazy.
Almost a century.
Yeah, a long, long time. He didn't like getting out of the spotlight. David Ben-Gurion and this other gentleman, Burl Katznelson, he was the founder of the Hebrew labor union, the Histadrut. Their ideology are really instructive about Zionism, the nature of Zionism itself, because it's paired with a lot of values in theory. Like it's like, okay, it's humanism, it's progressive, it fixes historical injustice theory. In practice, it has exactly one core value, and that core value is Jewish supremacy in its as yet unfixed borders. Like David Ben-Gurion lived his whole life as a head of left-wing Zionism, but in some of his more straightforward writing, you can see, like, you know, when leftists talk about revolution, like, I'm not saying it's like I agree with everything they say, but like for them they mean, oh, it's against oppression, it's against all oppression. When David Ben-Gurion talked about revolution, for him revolution means establishing the Jewish state. That's what it means. It doesn't mean something else. It doesn't mean abolishing oppression. It doesn't mean freeing the workers from the chains of capital. It means establishing a Jewish state. And to him, the foundation of the Jewish state is societal unity. Big capitalists, little capitalists, and workers all working together to make the state strong. And same thing with this guy, Burl Katznelson. For him, like, Jewish holidays were not holy days. He was an atheist. They're just like material. You can use them to do a thing. In this case, you can use them to make the state together, to like exploit the religious feelings that are within many Jews.
They're means to an end.
Exactly. And many biographies, I'm not like just saying this for myself, biographies by Zionist historians, and just looking at his trajectory of his politics over his years, make the same point. He wasn't really a leftist, even though he was like the head of leftism in Israel for a long time. Socialism needs a strong state to manage things. Like, you're managing so much stuff, your state needs to be very strong. So he was a socialist because it gave him the means to build a strong state. That's where it comes from. And it helps that, like, if you preach socialism, if you give people some stuff, then they'll follow you more. And so, like, under his governance, Israel had a lot of free stuff for people, very low-cost housing, free healthcare, free education, etc.
So the argument here is that this was all just as a means to strengthen the state to get him to where he actually wants to go.
Yeah, he wasn't like some sort of sincere leftist. His main value, his first value, was Jewish supremacy. And that's a point I've made before to Zionists. Like, remember I was talking to a libertarian who is also a Zionist. And I told him, those two things kind of contradict. And I explained because of things like the absentee property law, which the Zionists enacted, where they just literally like unilaterally confiscated all the Palestinian property that they had driven people off of in the 1948 Nakba. And he was like, well, I completely disagree with that. Really? They did that? I was like, yeah, because that's their only value is Jewish supremacy. Everything else, all the things you value, like, free speech and free enterprise and property rights, because for libertarians, property rights are like the most important thing in the universe. That goes by the wayside. That's not something they care about. And that's something that I think is important to remember. And obviously, like, ethnic cleansing is not really leftist. I can't imagine a leftism that calls for ethnic cleansing. But there are almost no Zionist leaders who didn't call for ethnic cleansing. They just use nice words for it, like transfer. The Palestinian historian Noor Masalha has a really good book about this called it basically says from I forgot the name of it, but like it says the transfer in Zionist thought. I think it's from the 1888 to 1936.
What's her name?
The historian's name is Noor Masalha.
Noor
Masalha.
Noor Masalha?
Yeah, Masalha. Maybe I'm saying that wrong because I've only seen it like in the transliterated version. But yeah, so and frankly, like, even the ones who pretended to oppose it were in favor of policies that required it. Like, if you're saying that you want a Jewish majority state and mandate Palestine, but you don't want ethnic cleansing, that's like saying, I just love omelets, but breaking eggs is bad. Don't break eggs. Just don't do it. Give me an omelet, but don't break any eggs. It's not possible. Like, you need ethnic cleansing to get a Jew majority state.
Dumb things I was about to say, but I forewent all of them, so I'm proud of myself.
Okay, so, and related to this is the fact that
So this is definitely, I think, what we can argue the state of a lot of modern Zionists, where they don't realize the extent of the contradiction and the clash, which brings us back to the very beginning, which is why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Do you think there's hope that they can be reached, these people?
I think you always have to hope you can reach people. I think convincing individual people means less than you think it does. I think sometimes it's better to hope that you can make things worse in some way. Like, you can create divisions and splits and problems. That sometimes is better than convincing individual people. That is my opinion. Regarding Ben-Gurion, also his faction was known for pragmatism. That might at least be part of why they, managed to come out on top early on. So, for example, he pretended to accept all divisions of Mandate Palestine under the British, all of them, including this one. This is the map of the Peel Commission Plan, which was proposed in 1937. It would have limited the Jewish state to these areas, which, again, were still the most valuable agricultural areas. So from Rehovot in central, this is not quite at the border of modern, like the Gaza Strip. There would be more that would still be like in the theoretical Palestinian Arab state in this one. But all that stuff in the north also would have been Jewish in the Peel Commission Plan. Also, as part of this plan, every single Arab Palestinian would have been ethnically cleansed from the green areas. He pretended to accept this. But in contrast, like the revisionists, who we'll talk about next, did not accept this. They said it was insulting. But he was like, no, we accept it in public. And then in his diary, he wrote, "We shall abolish partition and expand to the whole of Palestine." And even after like the war, he never said he would fix borders. To this day, Israel has no borders. It has armistice lines. It has like lines where there is not currently a conflict. There are no like actual borders.
It itself considers itself borderless.
Yeah.
We're not done yet.
No,
It's the
we're
official
not.
statement.
They are not. And one more thing that I want to say to like sort of drive a stake through the heart, if I may, of like the socialism of labor Zionism is the concept of avoda ivrit, Hebrew labor. I didn't want to put a lot of long quotes, but this is a really good one. So this is from Mapai, which is Ben Gurion's party. Mapai member David HaKohen said this. And
Who's David HaKohen?
He was a Mapai member. He was in several labor governments. He said this in 1969 in a Knesset session. I can give people the reference if they want. Quote, "I had to fight my friends on the issue of Jewish socialism, to defend the fact that I would not accept Arabs in my trade union, the Histadrut, to defend the preaching to housewives that they not buy at Arab stores, to defend the fact that we stood guard at orchards to prevent Arab workers from getting jobs there, to pour kerosene on Arab tomatoes, to attack Jewish housewives in the markets and smash the Arab eggs they had bought, to praise to the skies the Kerin Kayemet, the Jewish National Fund, that sent Hanlon to Beirut to buy land from absentee Effendi and to throw the Falahin off the land, to buy dozens of dunhams from an Arab is permitted, but to sell, God forbid, one Jewish dunham to an Arab is prohibited, to take Rothschild, the incarnation of capitalism, as a socialist, and to name him the benefactor. To do all that was not easy, and despite the fact that we did it, maybe we had no choice, I wasn't happy about it." Nice socialism you got there, buddy. So, yeah. Hebrew labor was an outgrowth of labor theorists' ideas about the new Jew and people formation. If Jews had to become workers, then the workers had to be Jews. Therefore, no Arab workers. Arab workers should not be used. Hertzl said the same thing. This is a rough quote. "We shall deny the natives employment in our country and speed them on somewhere else." And yeah, even the more leftist the Zionist groups were not inclusive of Palestinians in their national vision, like Mapam. Mapam was even crazier than Mapai.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, Mapam was even crazier than Mapai. They actually wanted to conquer the West Bank in 1949 and set up a Palestinian puppet state, and then use that state to fight Jordan or something. It was really weird. When I read that, I was like, good God, what's wrong with your heads? And to this, and actually nowadays, now that labor Zionism is basically dead, they're like those two parties are now in an alliance, and they're like one party in the parliament of the Jews called Ha-Demokratiyin, the Democrats. There's a joke in here somewhere. I'm just not sure where it is, because it's like...
Yeah, I'm still analyzing several levels of it, to be honest. So
Yeah.
there's no wings to the Israeli or to the Zionist plan. It's all right wing. Would you say that's a fair conclusion? And the left wingers are only saying this is
it's
a
right
tool.
wing from this perspective. Like, it's right wing in certain ways. It's left wing in other ways. They want to give people a lot of free money, and they want certain things to be cheaper. But like,
But even then, that's a tool for the state.
I'm not going to go into Yair Golan's head and like see like, is his leftism in that sense real or not. But like, I will say that everyone wants to bomb somebody. This is a joke I've come up with. You can kind of you can tell like where an Israeli politician is on the political spectrum by who they want to bomb the most. Right-wingers want to bomb everybody. They want to bomb Gaza, the West Bank, Syria, Yemen, Iran, Lebanon, nowadays Qatar and Turkey. Very generous.
Where do left-wingers want to bomb?
Centrists first. Centrists only want to bomb Iran and Lebanon and Yemen.
Okay.
That's it. Just Iran, Lebanon, Yemen. Just 3 places. And leftists only want to bomb Lebanon and Iran. Yair Golan, who is the head of the labor Zionists today, like the undisputed head, because there's only one labor Zionist party left, and only has like 12 guys in the parliament. He once argued, quote, that a real country would have made a security zone south of the Litani River in Lebanon, meaning that they should have made sure that not a single person could come south of the Litani River in Lebanon and not accepted that there be a security zone in the north of Israel. Does that sound leftist to anybody? I don't think so. So what do we take away from this? Zionist leftists are not like socialists who believe in equality and all these other things. They're nationalist socialists. Their first concern is the concern of settler states. They're not as crazy as the objects of our next lecture, but they're not friends of Palestine. And they can't be friends of Palestine except in so much as accelerating divisions in the society. The most serious concessions of territory to Palestinians have actually been proposed by right-wingers. The Gaza disengagement and the Olmert plan in 2008. That's from the right wing. Olmert was right wing and then center right. So by your fruits you know them. The Israeli left has laid so much foundations of the state and of the settler movement that like separating between them is an error. It doesn't make sense.
What's with the watermelon?
Oh, I'm sorry. So the watermelon. So this is avoda ivrit. This is basically saying Jewish watermelons. Buy only Jewish watermelons. Don't buy other watermelons. I'm not kidding. And the left side is just a picture of Jews working the land.
What year is that poster from? Do you know?
This is from the Yishuv. This is before the state started. This
So
is
1910s, 1920s maybe?
Maybe the 20s?
Someone put down on a shirt, buy Jewish watermelons.
I'm sure they did. Or these are posters. People used to get their politics from posters. Now they get them from Twitter, I guess.
And hoodies.
That's yes, and that's Yair Golan. That's Yair Golan, Zionist left, everybody.
He's the current head of the Zionist left.
Yes. Don't let anyone south of the Litani River. The Zionist left.
No one that's not Jewish, meaning?
Yeah. And this here, yeah. Well, nobody. Like 0 people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and here we have a picture on the left of the Gaza disengagement. Those 2 people wearing orange shirts and crying are settlers who don't want to leave Gaza. And on the right side, this is the Olmert plan, which was, to this day, the most generous plan for like a Palestinian state offered by any leader. It was offered by not someone on the political left. It was offered by someone on the political right in, Israel. Does that mean it's good? No, but it's more generous than the other things. Okay, so let's get to the revisionists. These guys are fun. So I'm going to talk about the modern Likud. And there's less to say here because even their precursors are kind of intellectually bankrupt. There's no lights on upstairs. They came to be in the interwar period, like between World War I and World War II, and that's not good for anyone. Like if your friend says, oh, I'm a fan of this new ideology, and it's from between 1919 and 1939, you tell him, my good man, you need to find a new ideology. Go somewhere else.
You don't need to investigate.
No. So the foundational idea of revisionist Zionism is summed up by this verse of a song that Zev Jabotinsky wrote. 2 banks has the Jordan. This is ours, meaning, this one, this is ours, and this one is ours also. That's basically it. Like, I could stop here, but I'll just give it a little more.
That's the summary.
In other words, revisionist Zionism rejected the Transjordan partition, where the British, took the eastern 3/4 of the mandate with, almost no land and almost no water, arable land anyway, and they gave it to one of the sons of Sharif Hussein and created Jordan. The revisionists thought this was a betrayal of the Balfour Declaration. They opposed it. That's why the revisionist terrorist militia, the Etzel or the Irgun, this is their logo looks like this because they're saying all of this is ours and we will fight you for it. Yeah.
And this is going all the way to where? This is
the Irgun, so this is pre-state.
No, I mean the what's that map of?
That map is of rough, it's stylized, but it roughly corresponds to just Western Mandate Palestine, which is modern Israel and the West Bank and Gaza, and the Eastern Mandate Palestine, which is Jordan. So Israel, Jordan. I don't think it like specifically lays claims anywhere else, really.
And Ben Gurion is a part of this.
No, these guys hated Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion hated these guys like so much. It was a thing. Revisionists are pretty easy to explain in two ways. The first one is that they were basically fascists. They wanted Zeev Jabotinsky as Führer. They were military focused. They believed that only some people were suited to bear their ideology. Jabotinsky used the word race to describe them. So, you know, like only some of the Jewish race whatever, are suited to be our guys. We're the supermen. You can see where this is going.
Yeah.
And he rejected publicly the idea of his being a Führer, but like a lot of his actions in the movement centralized a lot of power within himself. So it's like, if you don't like it, why are you doing these things? Like, it, you know, words, actions, tricky things. Fascism is a word that's thrown out around a lot nowadays, but it has a lot of meanings. I'm not going to go into it. The point is that, like, no less than, like, David Ben-Gurion and Albert Einstein called the Revisionist Party, at the time was called Herut, fascist party. And Ben-Gurion said that Menachem Begin, the head of Herut and the successor of Jabotinsky, was basically Hitler. And their theorists are not helpful either. Like, some of the revisionist theorists wrote that they wanted concentration camps for all their enemies, Jewish and non-Jewish both, blood and fire, establish a new order, embrace dictatorship. I mean, like, come on.
Who would you say is more representative of the population?
Oh, these guys. Definitely. Like, it's more complicated than that now, but these guys. These guys.
Always or just now?
Since 1977, it was 50-50 for a while, and then since the 90s, it's been mostly just these guys. There's like, we'll talk about politics more next time. It's, you know, complicated. Okay, so the thing about these guys is, like, what they mostly were is like oppositional. They were against class policies. They were against socialism, like, is what they saw as socialism. And the best way to talk about this is to talk about the systems of farming in Israel and who supported what, like in the pre-Israel Israel in Palestine. When I say Israel, it's descriptive. It's not prescriptive. So here you can see two images. On the left, you can see wait, is that your left? That is your left. On the left, you can see a kibbutz. On the right, you can see a moshav. So basically, the three main systems of agricultural settlement in Palestine were kibbutzim, moshavim, and moshavot. You don't have to remember those words. The point is there are three different kinds. A kibbutz, which is on the left, is a kind of socialist collective farm, like a kolkhoz, if you're aware of like Russian stuff. All the members work the land together. They own the farm together. They own the machinery together. It was an attempt to like proletarianize Jews. It did not work. Some of them did like wacky social experiments, like raising all children collectively, like not letting children know who their parents were really. That also did not work. That was a bad idea.
What a surprise.
Yeah, very early Soviet Union wacky stuff. Yeah, I know, it's really weird. Moshavim were more normal. A moshav basically be a bunch of families who settle in an area. They farm separately, but they like get together to buy equipment and to market their produce and stuff. And then moshavot were just villages where a lot of people farmed, like places that were established for farming. A lot of people farmed there. They all farmed separately. They marketed separately. And that type was more associated with revisionism, basically. You know, families doing family things.
Less socialist.
Yeah. They were capitalists through and through, if less ideologically rigid, and you know, Republicans or whatever. This was revealed by 1977 when they came to power in what was called Hamapach, the revolution. Two more noteworthy facts about revisionists. There's a famous Israeli dissident called Israel Shahak, whose books are decent reading, if exaggerated in some counts. And he summed up the pessimism of their worldview when he said that they believe Jews are doomed to uniqueness by their past. To become a nation among the nations is impossible. This has an effect on their policy positions. As we see today with, like, you know, Netanyahu, these are some revisionists celebrating. As we see today with like Netanyahu and his cohorts, they don't really care about things like, you know, human rights and appearances and fitting into world norms and stuff. Labor Zionists pretended to care about those things. Maybe some of them really did, I don't know. But the Likudniks, which is basically like Likud partisans, don't care for them on purpose. And the second thing is Jabotinsky's, this is Found this. Look, this is you just can't, you change a couple of things. This could very easily be like a Mussolini poster. It would be very easy. Welcome Jabotinsky, founder of the Jewish Legion. He founded a legion in the British Army that was only Jews. No, yes, that's the Nakba. Where was I gonna? So the second thing is his one famous idea, which is not a very good idea, but it's famous, from his text, The Iron Wall. It's very short. All of you should read it. Did you read it when I put it in the group?
I did not. You're not supposed to yell at me in front of everybody.
I'm just kidding. I know you're a busy guy.
The Iron Wall.
Yeah, The Iron Wall. Also, The Ethics of the Iron Wall, which is his addendum.
All of you should read it. One homework at a time, huh?
Yeah, two homeworks.
The Ethics.
3 homeworks. So many Zionists were initially extremely deluded. And they were like, oh, we can rob Palestinians of their country by giving them money, economic benefits. People like money, and so that'll work. And Jabotinsky, to his dubious credit, did not believe that. Jabotinsky said, these guys are the native population. If there's a hope for them of reverting their country to their control, they will resist and struggle. But that since Zionism is correct, and this is in his Ethics of the Iron Wall addendum, then anything we do to accomplish it must likewise be correct.
Very
I don't know what. So the funny thing is, he says this while saying, "I'm prepared to take an oath binding ourselves and our descendants that we shall never do anything contrary to the principle of equal rights, and that we shall never try to eject anyone." Which, okay, I mean, are you listening to yourself? Or are you just kind of like stringing words together? Come on. You can't possibly say these things together. It makes no sense.
Is it a trick to trick the civilization around them? Or is it, these aren't people, we believe this, but these are, what is the reasoning then?
My assumption is it's a trick, or my assumption is maybe he was very,
the world doesn't allow me to say these are animals that I want to kill, so I have to say something.
I don't really know, because it makes no sense to say all those things. It's like doublethink. Like he has these two ideas in his mind which contradicts, and you can't possibly think both those things, but he espouses them both. So which is it? By their fruits you shall know them. This is the fruit.
Seems like there's no amount of cognitive dissonance that can,
Oh, there's supposed to be a picture. Okay. So, as I was saying, so he proposes a solution to the problem of 2 nations in Palestine. The solution is military force. They can't carry out the colonial enterprise with the consent of the population. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody consents to be dispossessed and herded into little plotches of land. So what they can do is build overwhelming military power to stop any attempt to resist this, and eventually the natives will give up because they'll have no choice. I don't think I have to spell out to anybody watching this or anybody here the relevance of this idea to Israeli policy today. Mm-hmm. I think it is extremely obvious. I don't have to give any examples. Everyone knows. And this concept was in fact accepted by ultimately all Zionist political actors. All of them accepted it. Yeah, that's revisionism. And so at this point, these are the secular Zionisms, the important ones. There are other ones. They're not important. They really aren't. Next lecture we're going to look at religious Zionisms, and also the political system of Israel, because the way it's set up really empowers certain kinds of people, certain kind of small, dedicated, motivated groups of people, and that tells a story about why it is the way it is now. It's going to help us understand the power that minority groups have held in governments and how they make use of it. So that's week 3, all 7 of you.
Jazakallah khair. And I have a couple of questions. I know that
Sure.
There's a couple of them that will be answered next week, so feel free to just say that. But seeing as how the secular Zionism is the original version of it, or the
labor Zionism and revisionist Zionism are both secular. Like Netanyahu is not religious. Netanyahu eats at Burger King. Netanyahu probably doesn't even believe in God. Not even a God who would permit him to do these things, but probably I very much doubt he believes in God.
In the first place.
Yeah.
So I guess next week we'll explore the religious Zionism again, but the shift, I guess this is all up to what timeline before we explore religious Zionism? So when did the shift happen at least?
So religious Zionism always had some kind of power, but when when Mapai, like when the labor Zionists had their like, ridiculous like 48 seats in the Knesset, 53 seats, 38 seats, like what they could do was limited. And so they had like less ability to influence that because all these like secular non-religious groups were like the groups that had the most of the seats. And so they would compromise with the labor Zionists to be part of the governments. There's interesting sections about this sort of thing in a book called 1949 about like the relationship between the religious establishment and the non-religious establishment.
Okay.
So.
And everything we just discussed now is founding up until you said the 70s?
Like I haven't discussed like even like that much of anything past the 70s. Like I thought early on, like when I was conceiving this, I had to discard the history thing because it would take too long.
Yeah.
Like this is intellectual history, so I'm talking about like the ideas that ran the state until 1977, and then after. I mean, it's not like revisionist Zionism, labor Zionism was still relevant until like the 2005, 2007, 2009, even like the mid 2010s, they still had a gasp here and there, but like it was really not. It wasn't the same kind of thing. It became kind of there's a process a lot of Western democracies went through where they had like a hegemonic left party that had like total power, like here, like the New Deal Democrats, and then like after the 1970s, everything kind of falls apart. That happened in a lot of places at the same time, and there's. You should read Nixon Land. That's a good one.
Nixon Land?
Nixon Land. That kind of goes over that. That's like thousands. That's like a lot of pages, though.
All right. I don't know why I'm writing it, but fine.
It's very good, though. Any other questions you have before I can ask other people?
No, I'm not super important.
Any questions?
Comments, feedback, thoughts? Please, go ahead. Listen. Right, Salam.
Like a son. Well, it led to peace in a lot of places. It led to peace in the United States. The United States native population was pacified. It's like there was a brief flare of like American Indian sentiment that had like that went along with like radicalism in the 70s, but like it basically the idea is if it worked in these places, why wouldn't it work here? And some people actually argue that it didn't work here because it wasn't total. So like
it not being total is a
right.
I'm not total.
I'm not saying no, because like the idea being that like there wasn't a total expulsion.
Okay.
Like the idea being that like it wasn't total expulsion to other places, far-flung places. That's Benny Morris's idea. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying like the idea is still there. The idea is if we shove a lot of these people out of the place, this will fix the problem, not make it worse. And because there are like those examples like Australia, like the United States of America, like New Zealand, where, like
the natives
lost.
Yeah,
like to put it in like a 3-word sentence, the natives lost. They were pacified. A lot of the peoples who were natives in other places were also pacified, and they're no longer politically relevant. So that's why. It's because being native is not a guarantee of winning or of even being relevant again, unfortunately. And obviously it hasn't worked yet, and bi'idhnillah it does not work ever, even for like 30 seconds. But that is the idea, and it was based on those case studies.
Yeah, faith-wise, of course we
Yes.
believe in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that, like, just to be pragmatic, and I don't want to be a pessimist. Did we shut off the live stream? Is it off? It's still on? I don't want this on the internet, but is it off?